Vision, vision. Yeah. All right, so the eye has many extrinsic eye muscles, extrinsic meaning outside of the eye. There are 6 total. They arise from the bones of the orbit of the eye, and they are inserted into the surface of the eye, into the sclera. There's the superior rectus, which rotates the eye up and down medially. So here's the superior rectus. Superior means on top. Inferior rectus rotates the eye down and medially. So here's our inferior rectus. The medial rectus rotates the eye medially. So here's our medial rectus there. The lateral rectus rotates the eye laterally. Here's our lateral ones. And we have the superior oblique, which rotates the eye down and laterally. So here's our superior oblique. And our inferior oblique rotates the eye up and laterally. I do not need you to memorize the muscles. I just want you to know there are 6. Each muscle has about 5 to 10 fibers. That's only 5 to 10 muscle cells, and that's the least in the body for any muscles. And this is because we have the greatest muscle precision in our eyes. So the eye is spherical. It has about 3 layers. There's the outer fibrous tunic, the middle vascular tunic, and the inner nervous tunic. And we're going to break down each of these. So the outer tunic is composed of the cornea and the sclera. So the cornea is seen here, and the sclera is the white part of your eye. So the cornea is a window of the eye. It helps you focus the light rays that are entering. So it is similar to the lens, and it helps you focus. It's largely composed of connective tissue, and there's a thin layer of epithelium on there as well. There are no blood vessels, but it has many nerve fibers, and those nerve fibers are mostly pain receptors and cold receptors. And the threshold for the pain and the cold is very, very low, so they're stimulated very easily. The sclera is along the circumference, and it's continuous with the cornea. So the cornea is found here in the front, and then the rest of this is all sclera. And it's the white portion of the eye, and it's white and opaque because it's very disorganized collagen and elastic fibers, whereas the cornea is very organized connective tissue fibers. And this protects the eye, and it attaches those extrinsic muscles from the eye to the orbit of the eye. So in the middle tunic, we have the iris and the ciliary body. The iris is pigmented, that's the colored part of your eye. And it's also the muscle that controls the pupil size, so it dilates or constricts your pupils. The ciliary body, it holds the lens in place, and it also moves the lens for focusing. And we're going to go into each of those in more detail. The other part of the middle tunic is the choroid coat. It loosely joins all that sclera together. It does have blood vessels, which nourish the surrounding tissues. It also has melanocytes, and those melanocytes make melanin. So the choroid coat has a brown to blackish appearance. And also the melanin it produces absorbs excess light, which helps keep the inside of your eye dark, so you're not overstimulating. So the anterior portion of the eye is filled with aqueous humor. We have 2 chambers. We have the anterior chamber, which is up here above the iris, and then the posterior chamber is below the iris and also in the bigger part of your eye. So the epithelium on the inner surface of the ciliary body, so the ciliary body is here. So it's connecting this, the sclera to the rest of the eye. Here is our iris and our lens, and our cornea is here, and our sclera is this white part. So we have, it's filled with aqueous humor, and the aqueous humor is a watery fluid. It circulates around this posterior chamber, and it goes up through the pupil to the anterior chamber, and it's filling the space between the cornea and the lens, and that's helping the nutrients, and it also maintains the shape of the front of the eye. And then it'll leave the anterior chamber through veins and special drainage canals. So just reiterating, it's fluid in the anterior cavity. It provides nutrients. It also maintains the front shape of the eye. The iris is a thin diaphragm, mostly composed of connective tissue and smooth muscle fibers. It is the colored portion of your eye, and it extends forward from the ciliary body and lies between the cornea and the lens. And this is, you also use these muscles to contract and dilate your pupils. So the lens, the body of the lens lacks blood vessels and is directly behind the iris and the pupil. So here is our lens. There's a cross section cut out. It is behind right here is our iris and here is our pupil. And it's composed of very special epithelial cells, specifically columnar cells. That starts to grow from just a very thin layer of epithelium here. Those cells will divide and will grow from the front back. So your lens thickens with age. It's pulled by ligaments that are protruding from the ciliary body. They're called ciliary processes or ciliary ligaments, and that's what causes this lens to have a flat capsule-like shape. The ciliary body is the thickest part of the middle tunic and extends from the whole choroid coat, and it forms the internal ring around the front of the eye. It has many folds, and those folds, like I said, hold that lens in place. So here we have processes from the ciliary body. Here's those suspensory ligaments, and it's holding the lens in place. So accommodation is when the tension of those suspensory ligaments relaxes, and when they relax, it causes the lens to have a more convex shape. And this occurs when you're trying to focus on something closer to your face, and when they become more tense, you have a less convex lens, and this is when you're focusing on something farther away. And this is called accommodation. So the inner tunic is composed of the retina, which is the back of your eye, and it contains visual receptors. It's also continuous with the optic nerve. The macula lutea is a yellowish spot in the retina, and it's typically at the very middle of the retina. And then in the middle of that yellowish spot, there's the fovea centralis, and this is the sharpest vision. It's called your focal point. It's where all the light rays focus, and you have the sharpest vision. Near that, typically medially from that, is the optic disc, and this is your blind spots. And this is a blind spot because there are no visual receptors there. This is where the fibers are directly connecting to the optic nerve. So you're not receiving light. It's where all those nerves are converging and sending off. We also have vitreous humor, which is a thick gel, and it holds the retina flat against the choroid coat. It fills the biggest part of your eye. That big hollow empty space is filled with vitreous humor. So light waves that enter your eye must pass through the cornea, and then they must pass through aqueous humor, which is in the anterior chamber. It must pass through the lens, and then the vitreous humor is all throughout here. And then the retina is very, very thick, and it has many layers, so it has to go through all those layers before it even reaches the photoreceptor. Here's the fovea centralis, your focal point. Here's the optic disc, which is your blind spot, and you can see right here, it's right where the optic nerve is connecting to the eye. So for us to focus, we have a lot of light refraction. If you've taken physics, you know a lot about this, but just quickly, refraction is when we bend light, and it occurs when light waves pass at an oblique angle into mediums of different densities, so liquids or solids. And the light waves bend so that they can converge and focus. So in our eye, we have convex lenses, and those convex lenses cause the light waves to converge and focus. You can kind of see all the light waves and how they hit the lens here and then converge on the retina. That converging is focusing. So the light is first refracted by the cornea at the very front of the eye, and that's about 75% of the total refractive power we needed. And then it's refracted again by the lens further, and then even slightly more by the vitreous humor inside the eye. The visual cortex, the image that is focused on the retina is upside down and it's reversed from left to right. But our visual cortex in our cerebrum interprets the image and corrects it so that we see them in their real positions. But there were tests done where subjects were forced to look at everything upside down. I believe they were given specialized glasses to wear, and it kind of flipped everything they were seeing. And what happened was, over time, their cerebrum flipped those images and interpreted them as right side up. So it's all in our brain. Everything that hits the back of our eye is upside down and flipped, but our brain interprets it differently. So here are the layers of the retina. So this is the vitreous humor, and this is the direction the light waves come in. We do have a layer of nerve fibers. These are all the axons, and then this is a large layer of connecting neurons, and there's all these different types of neurons here. And then those neurons synapse with our receptor cells. We have rods, which are these long purple ones, and we have cones, which are these fatter pink ones. And those rods and cones have processes, and those processes extend into this pigmented epithelium. And then that is connected to the pigmented choroid coat, which is also connected to the sclera, which is the very back of the eye. So the rods and cones are the photoreceptors. They're located deep within the retina, and they're only stimulated when there's light present. And each receptor is a small part of making an entire scene. So it's like one pixel on the computer screen, and we need all those rods and cones to be stimulated to create a full image. So rods are long and thin. They have long, thin projections at their terminal ends. There's about 100 million rods and only 3 million cones, and cones are very short and they have very blunt projections. On rods, the projections extend into the pigmented epithelium layer and contain light-sensitive visual pigments. This is both rods and cones, sorry. The epithelial pigment, that layer of the retina, will absorb light waves that the rods and cones don't. And so this helps maintain the dark inside your eye so that light waves are not continuously reflecting and refracting inside your eye. Like I said, the visual receptors are only stimulated when light reaches them. Some receptors are stimulated and send those impulses to the brain. Each receptor is just a small portion of information required to interpret the total scene, so we need many receptors stimulated to see the whole scene. The rods are 100 times more sensitive to light than cones, so we use them more to have our vision in dim light. They also help us with colorless vision, and they work more to outline general objects, whereas cones work more to have sharper images. And I go into why in a few slides. So for the cones, there's 3 different cones. We have red, green, and blue. There's erythrolabe, chlorolabe, and cyanolabe, and it's the combinations of these 3 that give us the colors that we see. So those are 3 almost primary colors. If we see all 3 in equal strength, that is white, and if we see none of them, if there's no color or no light, that is black. So rods have more convergence, which is the impulses transmitted to the brain converge onto the same nerve fiber, and so that nerve fiber causes the brain to not be able to tell which receptors were stimulated because they all converged onto one nerve. That's why rods give a more general outline of objects. Cones don't have as much convergence, so the brain can pinpoint stimulation more accurately. So here we have rods and all of their impulses are converging onto one nerve fiber. Here we have cones and there's less convergence or no convergence in this diagram. So rhodopsin is the visual pigment for rods, and it is a purple pigment. When light hits these pigments, they decompose. And rhodopsin, in the presence of light, will decompose to opsin, which is colorless, and retinal, which is yellow. And then that will send the nerve impulse that receptor was stimulated. Bright light will decompose most rhodopsin, so the rods don't work well in very bright light. But what can happen is you can remake rhodopsin by combining the available opsin and retinal, and that causes you to be light adapted. So it's like when you're in a bright light and like a bright sunny day and you go into a theater and you can't see well, but then your eyes adapt. That's because you are recombining the opsin and the retinal to form rhodopsin. So you do need vitamin A because you need vitamin A to make retinal in the first place. So eating your carrots does make your night vision better if you have a vitamin A deficiency, which most of you do not. All right, we're going to cover the rest of this PowerPoint in class tomorrow rather quickly, and then your test will be on Wednesday. All right, I see you later. Bye.